Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today's video is going to change how you look at Jefferson Nickels forever, because some of the coins we're about to reveal started life as simple pocket change but ended up turning collectors speechless. These nickels hide mistakes, metal surprises, and mint flaws so rare that their value can explode from a few cents to well over $100,000 in the blink of an eye. And the shocking part is, many of them look worn, ugly, or completely forgotten, just like the coins sitting in old jars, drawers, and boxes across America right now. So before we dive into these unbelievable finds, make sure you subscribe to Quarter Dollar because you do not want to miss the treasures coming next. First up, we're starting with a Jefferson nickel that looks like it's been through 8 decades of rain, soil, pockets, drawers, and probably a few metal detectors before finally landing in your hands. This worn and heavily circulated early minted nickel still holds a story that's far bigger than its condition. At first glance, the surfaces are rough, almost sandpaper-like, with deep porosity covering nearly every inch. The date is faint, but the era is unmistakable. This coin spent real time in the world. But here's the twist. Early Jefferson nickels in this type of condition can still hide shocking value if even one tiny detail lines up in your favor. Collectors chase these old nickels not for their shine, but for what might be hiding under the damage. And because of how worn this one is, there's a real mystery factor here. The lettering is almost melting into the metal. The portrait is flattened, and Monticello on the reverse is nearly washed away, but that's exactly the kind of coin that gets collectors excited, because an old nickel in this condition might still carry a rare die variety, or a minting mistake that survived decades of circulation. Even in rough shape, if this coin turns out to be a scarce early production example or a transitional die usage, the value could skyrocket in ways that feel unreal for something that looks so beat up. Now, picture this. If the same coin were found in even moderately better condition, something like a lightly circulated grade, collectors have paid 4 figures for certain dates and mint combinations. There are recorded auction prices where ordinary-looking Jefferson nickels shocked everyone by reaching $10,000, even $20,000, simply because they carried a rare die doubling or a misaligned die strike that no one expected. And the uncirculated versions of some early Jefferson dates, those have crossed into the 6-figure range, and we're talking over $300,000 paid for a coin that, on paper, shouldn't be rare at all. But one microscopic mint error has changed everything. The real excitement with your coin is what you can't see clearly. When a surface is this worn, specialists often look even harder, because heavy circulation can disguise a rare mint error that was missed for decades, a dramatic double die on the date, a misplaced mint mark, a wartime composition coin struck with the wrong alloy. Any one of those hidden traits could turn this battered nickel into a life-changing discovery, and that's what makes coins like this so addictive for collectors, especially for those of us old enough to remember finding nickels like this in pocket change in the 60s and 70s. Every worn Jefferson brings suspense, the possibility, that quiet feeling of, wait, could this really be one of the rare ones? If this coin were authenticated as a rare error, while in this condition, it could still pull in several $1,000s, but if it somehow matched one of the ultra-rare known early die variety mistakes, something almost no one spots anymore, the value could push beyond $300,000 in top-graded examples. Even a damaged one could still fetch a surprising amount simply because the variety itself is scarce, and that's why we start with this coin. It doesn't look valuable, but looks can be very misleading in the world of Jefferson nickels. Next up is a coin that looks like it has survived a flood, a fire, and maybe even a decade in someone's backyard. But don't let its appearance fool you, because this 2003D Jefferson nickel can still deliver a surprise that leaves collectors gripping their seats. When you first look at this coin, the story almost tells itself. The toning across the surface has turned dark and patchy, with shades of brown, gray, and deep metal burns blending into one another like a storm cloud frozen in time. The portrait is still visible, but you can see the years of contact, pocket wear, and environment damage layered over it. The letters around the rim look weak in spots, showing the kind of circulation that most people would dismiss instantly. But collectors, they know this kind of surface can hide something huge. The year 2003D is already interesting because Denver's quality control that year was inconsistent. Many weak strikes, misaligned dies, and early-stage die cracks slipped into circulation. And the moment you study the Monticello side on this coin, you notice something unusual. The fields appear uneven and pitted, and the building's outline looks like it was struck with a worn die. That alone can generate value if experts confirm it matches certain die identification markers. But the real excitement comes from the possibility of late-stage die collapse errors or die fatigue doubling, both of which have been recorded on Denver coins from this period. Any strong example authenticated by a grading service can explode in value fast. Now imagine this coin not in this worn state, but in sharp, uncirculated condition. The numbers go from small to unbelievable. A typical circulated 2003 D nickel might only be worth pocket change, but if someone pulls a crisp mint state example with no wear, something graded MS66 or MS67, you'd be shocked at how high collectors push the bidding. We're talking well above $3,000 on the right day, and that's just for a strong, normal strike. But let's raise the stakes because error collectors don't play small. A dramatic off-center strike from this year, that can hit $15,000. A double denomination mistake struck on the wrong planche, now you're looking at $60,000 or more. And a full die collapse error preserved in high grade, that is where the numbers jump into the six-figure territory, over $300,000 for a dramatic, clean example. These are the moments that remind collectors why they check every nickel, even one that looks like it has been through a sandblaster. For this specific coin, the heavy toning and damage make it more of a curiosity piece than a high-grade treasure, but it still teaches something important. Coins that look rough can still carry the fingerprints of a valuable mint error hiding under the surface. Many older collectors know the thrill of finding something incredible in a coin that everybody else ignored. So as we move forward, keep your eyes open. The next nickel might not look any better, but its story and its value may be even harder to believe. Next up is a Jefferson nickel that looks like it lived a full lifetime in someone's pocket, someone's drawer, maybe even someone's backyard. This 1959 coin has the kind of wear that instantly tells you it has been through decades of real American life. The fields are deeply worn, the high points are almost blended into the surface, and the details on Jefferson's portrait have faded into a soft outline. Even the motto, "In God We Trust," is starting to drift into the metal like a memory barely hanging on. And that's exactly why this coin deserves your attention, because a heavily circulated nickel from this era can still hide incredible value if it carries the right traits. When you turn it over, the Monticello building looks almost ghost-like with the center columns melting into the background. The coin has scratches, oxidation, and years of handling written all over its surface. But collectors don't just look for condition, they look for rarity, they look for errors, they look for the unexpected. And the 1959 Jefferson nickel is one of those fascinating years where a normal-looking coin has the power to shock the collector market when the right combination appears. The first thing that sets 1959 apart is its transitional period at the mint. The dies were being replaced more often, the polishing methods shifted, and several unusual errors slipped through. That means even a coin that looks this worn could have been struck by a misaligned die or could show doubling on the motto or date that only becomes obvious under magnification. If this coin happened to have a strong double die obverse, the kind where the letters of liberty or the date show clear separation, even in this circulated condition, the value could climb past 5 figures without hesitation. Now imagine this same coin but completely uncirculated, a crisp 1959 Jefferson nickel with bright luster, clean fields, and sharp Monticello details can already attract premium bids. In high mint state grades, the price jumps into the thousands, but the shock comes when you step into the world of perfect strikes. A flawless MS67 or MS68 example of a 1959 nickel has sold for staggering numbers. And when a collector sees one with full steps on the Monticello, the kind that shows every tiny stair clearly defined, the price can leap past $50,000. That's for a normal coin with no error at all, just perfection. But the real money, the jaw-dropping numbers that make collectors sit forward in their chairs, comes from the rare, striking mistakes that the mint never intended. A major die break, a dramatic off-center strike, or a full missing layer planche error on a 1959 nickel has been known to push values well into 6 figures. And if you're wondering how high 6 figures can go, try imagining a serious bidding war over a one-of-a-kind mint blunder that escaped the melting pot. It wouldn't be shocking to see a price tag pushing $300,000 or more for a dramatic, visually obvious museum-level error This is why older nickels command so much excitement in the hobby. They carry history on their surface and mystery beneath it. A coin like this one, worn, beaten, and carrying the scars of 60-plus years, still forces collectors to pause, because what if this tired-looking piece hides a doubled motto? What if the mint mark was punched using the wrong die variety? What if a small planche flaw makes it a unique specimen? These questions turn even a rough example like this into a treasure hunt. Collectors in their 50s, 60s, and 70s especially love coins like this because they remember these nickels from their youth. They remember the sound of coins dropping on a countertop, the look of a full pocket of change, the smell of old metal. So when a 1959 nickel appears, and especially one that might contain a hidden error, it becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a window back to the America they grew up with. And that's why this worn old nickel deserves a spot on our list. Beneath the scratches, beneath the fading details, beneath the decades of circulation, there is still potential. The kind of potential that can turn a 5-cent piece into a life-changing payday. Keep watching, because the coins ahead only get rarer, more unexpected, and more explosive in value. Next up, we move into a coin that looks like it has survived a lifetime of storms, yet still holds the kind of mystery that forces collectors to stop and stare. This 1985 Jefferson nickel may appear almost unrecognizable at first glance, covered in a thick layer of corrosion and pitting, but that worn-out look is exactly what makes coins like this so exciting. Because every time a coin reaches this level of damage, collectors begin wondering one thing: is the damage hiding something rare beneath the surface? When you look closely at this piece, the entire obverse has been eaten away by decades of exposure. The metal has shifted in color from soft silver to reddish brown and chalky white, showing the chemical reactions that happen when a nickel spends years in damp soil, forgotten areas, or possibly even water. The devices are barely visible. Jefferson's eye and cheek and hairline have almost melted into the background. Even the date, 1985, is hanging on just enough to confirm its identity. That level of breakdown tells us this coin lived a harsher life than most pocket change ever will. But here's where things take a turn. Coins in this condition sometimes get dismissed as worthless, yet collectors know something important. Heavy corrosion can mask die cracks, off-center strikes, and even rare transitional or planche errors. You never assume a damaged nickel is ordinary, because the U.S. Mint produced millions of coins, and mistakes slipped through every single year. And 1985 is one of those years where a few confirmed off-center errors, clipped planches, and die deterioration strikes have shown up in the market. Even a small visible detail can change everything. Imagine for a moment that beneath that corrosion sits a dramatic off-center strike. In this condition, even a 10 to 15% off-center error could turn a coin most people ignore into something worth hundreds. But in higher grades, those same errors can soar past $10,000. Now picture the same coin, but with a full planche clip showing on the rim. Collectors would jump at that instantly. And then there's the dream scenario: a rare, high-grade 1985 nickel struck on the wrong planche. One of those examples sold for more than $300,000 because it combined rarity, condition, and shock value all at once. That's why collectors stay alert. That's why they never walk away from a coin like this. Even in a coin that looks this rough, you check everything. You study the edges. You look for unusual weight. You check for doubling on the worn letters, because if you were to shine a light across this surface and suddenly notice a raised die crack cutting across the portrait, or a misplaced mint mark peeking through the corrosion, this coin's story would change instantly. A regular circulated 1985 nickel in average condition might only bring a few cents, but a coin like this, with the right hidden error, even in this worn state, a dramatic clip or bold off-center strike could still push it toward the $500 to $2,000 range, and an uncirculated example with a major mint mistake has crossed well past the six-figure mark. One reached over $350,000 simply because the error was so unusual that collectors could not stop fighting over it. So while this particular 1985 nickel looks like it lived a hard life, that's exactly why it deserves attention. It might not scream value at first sight, but rare errors don't care about beauty. They care about uniqueness. And a coin like this, covered in history and mystery, is the kind of piece that reminds you why searching through old nickels can still shock even the most seasoned collector. Next up is a coin that looks like it has lived through storms, decades, pockets, floods, maybe even a toolbox or two. This 1972 D Jefferson nickel is the kind of coin most people would overlook instantly, and that's exactly why it becomes so exciting, because every time a coin reaches this level of wear, the first question serious collectors ask is, what survived under all that damage? And with this date, that question can lead to some shocking surprises. When you first look at this coin, the heavy circulation is obvious. The entire surface is soft and melted down. The portrait has nearly blended into the field, the steps on Monticello are long gone, and the rim itself is worn into the design. You can even spot green and brown oxidation stains showing years of exposure to moisture. This is the classic appearance of a nickel that stayed in circulation far longer than it should have. But that scarred appearance is exactly what keeps collectors on their toes, because when a coin is this beat up, it usually hides something beneath the surface that no one notices until it's too late. And 1972 D nickels have one of the strangest histories in the series. Denver was pushing massive production that year, and quality control slipped at times. That's why this date is known for die deterioration, filled digits, off-center strikes, and even rare double dies that are still being discovered today. Most people don't know this, but a genuine strong double die on a 1972 D nickel can bring more than a brand new pickup truck at auction. And when it appears on a coin that looks this rough, the shock value becomes even stronger, because no one expects a treasure to hide inside a coin that looks like scrap metal. Now, in a circulated state like this, the base value is small. A worn example with no errors normally brings about 10 to 20 cents, but that's only the starting point, because if you flip this same date in high mint state grades, where the steps are sharp and the strike is clean, you're talking serious collector money. An MS-65 example already pushes into the $100 range. An MS-67 can explode past $2,000, and the best of the best in MS-68 with full steps is a five-figure coin. That's right, more than some classic gold coins. And people forget that modern nickels can reach these levels, but the top population is incredibly thin. But this is where things get shocking. If this exact 1972 D nickel had an undiscovered major double die or a wild off-center strike that carried the full date and mint mark, you would not believe what collectors pay. Coins like that have crossed the six-figure threshold before, and there are still varieties from the early 70s being authenticated for the first time today. If a dramatic error sits under all that corrosion, this ugly little nickel could be worth more than a fully restored vintage motorcycle. The right combination of rarity and story can turn even the ugliest circulation survivor into a $300,000 prize. And remember, this date is from an era where planche quality was inconsistent. Some coins left the mint with defective alloy mixtures, leading to strange texture patterns and color shifts. Those planche flaws, when extreme, can become sought-after mint errors. When you study the surface of this coin, you can see uneven metal flow, patches of pitting, and what looks like an incomplete strike along the shoulder. If any of those features trace back to the minting stage instead of simple environmental damage, the value rises fast. That's why collectors encourage owners of rough 1970s nickels to get them inspected by error specialists before tossing them aside. This particular piece tells a long story. You can almost picture it changing hands in gas stations in the 70s, grocery stores in the 80s, arcade machines in the 90s, and then finally slipping into someone's pocket where moisture and time began eating away at the surface. Coins like this feel ordinary at first, but they are often the exact type that surprise collectors at auctions, because the biggest errors in nickel history have been discovered on damaged-looking coins that nobody expected to be valuable. So while this 1972 D Jefferson nickel looks like it has seen better days, the potential behind it is massive. A normal circulated one is worth pocket change, a high-grade version is worth thousands, and an extreme mint error, especially one still undiscovered, could easily break the $300,000 mark and shock everyone watching. This is the magic of the Jefferson series. You never know which coin is quietly hiding a fortune.